Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Amneet, for sharing insights about how Gen AI is going to change the world that we are living in. What we are going to discuss over the next 40 minutes is one of the more foundational elements on Gen AI which organizations need to set right. Before we begin, a quick introduction. My name is Aditya Priyadarshan. As the moderator was saying, I lead retail practice in India. And I, along with my fellow panelists, will try to share some practical examples about how data and analytics is helping their respective organizations transform their business. Now, as Accenture, what we see data and analytics is one of the foundational elements for businesses to get right. There are many studies that talk about we are living in a very different world than what we were just about 10 years back. Some say we are in a Pacific storm. Supply chain disruptions are more a norm. Consumer preferences are rapidly evolving. Businesses are getting disrupted from every angle, not just by the traditional incumbents, but various other players that are getting to be industry participants. Our view is data can be the perfect anchor in this storm. It can help businesses understand where they are heading and what do they need to do around decision making rather than just relying on gut. Now, just to take this thread forward, I am going to ask my fellow panelists, and Sandeep, maybe I can start with you. If you can share some experiences from your organization, how you are leveraging data and analytics to generate value for Shopperstock or something else that you have seen, and what kind of impact it has been able to drive for customers.
Thanks. Am I audible? Yeah. So perhaps in every area of business, data analytics is relevant, and in recent times it has become more relevant because customers are more demanding, I would say. They want more relevant stuff. They don't want to be bombarded by everything that I have on my shop floor. So data analytics is helping us firstly in targeting the relevant stuff for the customer. So I can give them personalized offering. I should not be offering something that a customer doesn't like to buy or have not purchased in last 10 years. I could always offer a complementary products, but I should not be offering something that customer has never shown an inclination for. So personalized offering is the topmost priority for us where we use data analytics. Second, when we do this personalized offering, of course, my cost of customer campaigns goes down and my conversion rates become up because I'm going to target a particular product to a set of cohort of customers, and the conversion rate is high because they have shown the affinity for that product or the related category for that products in the past. That is number one priority. Then when it comes to products, if I go and do some analytics and do some churning of data on what kind of products are selling in which stores, of course, I can then plan and buy for the products with similar attributes. So it is helping me in advance, how to buy for next seasons. Again, combined with data from Google Trends or combined with trends from international journals as to how fashion trend is shaping up. Again, it helps me to plan more relevant stuff for relevant people in relevant markets. So these would be the top 2-3. Of course, there are other areas, back-end operations, supply chain. But largely, I would say customer-facing areas, these would be the top 2, product and campaigns.
Thank you. Rajesh, if I may come to you next, if you could share, what you are doing in your organization and talk about some impact that you've seen either on top line, bottom line, or customer, as Sandeep was saying, that'll be good for us to know.
So we typically look at promotions from two, or say data analytics from 2 points of view. One is from the demand side, second is from the supply side. So when I see from the demand side, it's typically those 4 P's that you measure. It's the product, the place, the promotion, the price. And I always add another 5th, which is people. So how your people are doing. So when you start looking at those 5 data points, regularly, and when you start analyzing the data, sometimes it throws you something which probably you have not thought about it. Like somewhere mentioned about inventory pileup in fashion footwear especially. So over a period of last 16 to 18 months, we have been witnessing a drop in the smaller size, especially in the men's footwear category. Now, many of us may think that every size sell equally. That's not the case. So India, we are analyzing that today, the larger sizes are becoming more prominent. So how do I change my assortments accordingly so that I don't end up manufacturing more of a small size? That's an insight which comes primarily from your product data and your product sales data. So that's one such case. Second case is online marketplace competition and your pricing competition. So if you're analyzing your price trends, not just your product price trends, but also competition price trends, and how they are offering which kind of promotions, which kind of a pricing strategy they are using, doing that, you can also pitch in a better price to the consumer, make it more, say, product value for money, and that's how you can scale up the sales as well. That's second point. Third interesting area which we have seen, the online sales gave us visibility of the various territories where we can open offline stores. And I would like to mention a region where we were not very, say, gung-ho about that whether we should open stores, we should not open stores. We were very cautious in that territory. We never had a MBO reach to that territory. But the online data gave us conviction that this territory may be, worthwhile exploring. And I'm happy to share today is the second largest territory and second best territory from a retail footprint point of view for us. So that insight, that data insights does make a lot of difference to your business if you are carefully reading the data, analyzing and understanding the impact of the data, and then finally take an action according to it.
No, thank you. And, I just want to stress on this one because as I have seen, this has been one of the biggest shifts that has happened in the industry. If you would, if you'll all go back to about 3 years, 4 years back, online and offline were almost competing channels in most organizations, right? And if I talk to most of my clients, I mean, today they are complementing channels. And as you were saying, through the online data, you could identify where do you need to open store. This is one of the most powerful examples that one can look at. Rajiv, if I may come to you next, if you can share your experiences with, how data and analytics is adding value in your organization.
Sure. Yeah, so I think I'll just take a one step backward and ask as a business, what decision do I want to take and how would data enable me? That's a very simple statement, but I can tell you, being in a slightly fashion lifestyle categories, let's say we identified the first point as loss of sales. Can we identify and can we reduce? I think that is a very simple statement. To give you an example, we did some work with one of the large organized retailer, where we used to have complete access of data, try to analyze and figure out, and we ended up that there's a loss of sale of 50% plus. Now, of course, there could be some challenges, so effectively it may boil down to 20 to 25%, but that's a huge probably loss what we are encountering. But before coming to that decision, I think it took a lot of steps. The first problem is, how do you categorize and analyze 2000 SKU data across, let us say, 20 locations? That itself is a big challenge. You need to do proper category classification. You may divide the data into 50 different diverse ways, try to understand the data. And majority of the problem comes is, the people who understand consumer are not data scientists. And they are different people. So I think for both the sides to understand business in a totality, to look at a new available technology, figure out the best possible way, I think data can obviously throw a lot of advantages, but it needs a bit of evaluation process for each business. And it's a continuous journey. It's not a one time. You will always keep on refining. I think it's the way technology is available. 20 years back, we never talked about ERP. Or 30 years back, we were talking about not buying anything online. But I think technology, the way, starting from IRCTC to Swiggy to everything, Uber, they will change. I think that the same analogy is applicable to business. If you try to define the data in the right way, and I think second problem what we encounter was, most of the time, when your master data is not right, the way you have created data maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years back, that does not capture the right consumer insights. And you need to change that. I think that's the kind of evaluation process we are going through.
No, absolutely. I mean, creating that single version of truth is really at the foundation of it. And I mean, cannot agree more. Praveen, if I may come to you next, if you can, yours is again a large organization, complex organization with multiple business units. If you can talk about how you have seen the data and analytics getting leveraged at ABFRL and what kind of impact it's been able to create, it'll be good for the audience to hear from you.
Sure. I think, I mean, retail as a business is, I think extremely data dependent, and there is no question about it. I mean, I think in many ways the whole leveraging of data probably started from retail, maybe first BFSI and then retail, right, as the big two areas where that's happened. And a lot of the innovations as well have come from, companies like Amazon or who've been doing retail, right? And the complexity really comes in, and especially in fashion, from the large amount of data that's there, both at pretty much all levels. At one level, for when it comes to customers, right, you have a large base of customers. In our case, over 50 million across all our brands. So that many customers shopping across your product catalog typically could run into several, tens of lakhs. So over a period of time. So the amount of data that you are capturing at the product level, at the customer level, and then your the distribution channels, right? Whether own stores, marketplaces, own brand sites, department stores, so all kinds of formats. So there is just large, huge amount of data available, and which, if you are able to capture and leverage effectively, can definitely add huge value to all areas of the business. And I think in case of ABFRL, one of the things that we embarked upon several years back was to create that common data platform where we capture data from pretty much any system that's there in the company, whether it's the e-commerce, whether it's the point of sale, whether it is ERP, whether it is the PLM and so on, so that we have all the data in one place, and then we are able to leverage it for multiple use cases. I think as use cases, I think the ones that others also talked about, there are clearly the customer facing ones, so whether like personalization. I was talking to somebody about how we do, let's say, size recommendation, returns analysis, all those front-end use cases are is one bucket where multiple areas that you can do it. Again, personalization, we do online personalization on our sites, plus you also have campaign personalization, which needs different approaches. So there are different models working there. On the supply chain, again at different levels. I mean there may be during the replenishment process from the warehouses to stores, what assortment to keep, what pricing. I mean, pricing is one area where we have deployed models again to, since we have started doing regular discounting. That is, it's not just EOSS. We are products we keep discounting through the season. So those scenarios, it's virtually impossible for anybody to manually work those things out as to how much to discount which product, right, and where. So those all are basically can be done only with the sophisticated data analytics ML models that are available today, and I think pretty much every part of the value chain in retail is impacted by data.
No, absolutely, and thank you for sharing these examples. And as I heard about this, one of the things that I am reminded of, we did a research with globally the top 1,000 companies, and our research shows that fewer than 5% of the companies have been able to make significant strides in their data and analytics ambition, right? A lot of organizations have tried, but they have not necessarily been able to get the right kind of value. And my next question is going to be around this. And maybe, Sandeep, I'll start with you again, right? What are some of the things that organizations need to do to get started on this journey? And two-part question, what do you see some of the biggest challenges that they have to navigate as they scale up?
Okay, so I think two things. They need to clearly define their objectives. So analytics and data is a big area. So companies can have a different maturity level. At some places, let's say at level 1, they will have different teams doing different data sets from different systems. And when they come for a meeting on a Monday morning, the first thing they will crash, they're talking about different numbers. Then there is a maturity level where they have a centralized system. Then there is a maturity level where they're able to do data analytics and insights, and then of course AI-driven things. So company needs to define their, how they want to mature, because they get very much carried away by what somebody else is doing without understanding the journey they have gone through. And the first step towards that is, do you have a good quality data? That is where most of the companies start and fail, because they have very, very shiny objectives, but they don't know the quality of data, where it is sitting, what is the quality, how it can be improved, and how they can continuously ensure that their downstream systems which are creating data needs to, be plugged so that the quality of data in the future transactions is cleaned up. So I think objectives and then readiness both have to be kept in mind, and it has to be a journey. People try to achieve in 3 months, 6 months, and then they fail, and then they give up and they go back to the old thing. I think that to me, better planning is more important, and data quality is the biggest area, because if you get that right, then everything else can be bought through consulting people, technologies. But if you don't have that right, then getting it right, it's a humongous task. So that would be my take on that.
If I may come to you, what do you believe organizations need to do get started?
Exactly what Sandeep mentioned, defining the objectives is the key thing first of all. And most of us get lost in the ocean of data. Data is too much these days. What are we trying to achieve out of that? Are we just going there for hunting data, or are we really looking for a business value that we want to deliver? So key definition of objective is very, very important. And second thing is start small. Do not try to do too many things at a time. Do not try to see, I will look at data from 100 perspectives. As I said, key objectives have to be, maybe you have 3 to 5 key objectives. Start analyzing data from that point of view. Second, you may not have an internal expertise to understand and do that data mining and data analytics. If you don't have, please acknowledge it. Get a right partner for you. Right partner will be the one who can take you forward, picking your hand that this is how the journey of your key objectives can be delivered. Third key point would be, make sure that the data that you're trying to analyze, do you have that correct data, the complete data? If you don't have a complete data, start working on your data completion also. Like you mentioned that master data management is a very critical area. Most of the time we see that there is some element of data, but due to one missing link, we are not able to create any value out of that. So comprehensiveness of data is very, very important. That's a third piece, I would say. Fourth, as Sandeep mentioned, that do not get carried away. It's not a journey of 3 months, it's a continuous journey. Do not set your benchmark against someone who has been able to pull up a value lever and you can just replicate it as is. It's your journey, it's your evaluation. Keep patience, have faith. Most of the time I've seen data is not incorrect. It's our interpretation which is incorrect. So how do you do that correct interpretation? How do you get the right partner to bring you that value? I think those are 2-3 key elements which I see how organization can start and maybe start leveraging the data analytics.
Thank you. Rajiv, if I may come to you next, and maybe you can talk a little bit about, where do you believe companies fail in this journey, right? And are there any suggestions for them to mitigate around this?
So, I think I'll put it slightly differently in the sense when you start, first of all, you decide which are your low-hanging fruits. Where do you see the biggest upside? And you start with that. So you build your confidence. I think that's the one way I would look at it. Second, I think everybody has said, master data management is something, it should be right and defined well. Otherwise, rest of the process are going to be meaningless. Now the problem which I see coming are twofold. I think we try to treat data as one animal which is same across all industries, across all kind of businesses, and probably we are used to interpret in certain way. Here I want to add a word called complexity and domain expertise. Each business is probably, or maybe retail is a too wider term to be used, but let's say if I come from a furnishing industry, domain expertise and the way I evaluate the data could be very different from the way FMCG would be doing it. How do you inculcate that knowledge into your system? is I see a bigger challenge. That's one. Second, we being a manufacturer and brand marketeer where we don't really have own retail, I think people is again big challenge. When you have a team which is not used to analyzing the data, because that's not what your other businesses ever required in that kind of gravity. So not you, to change people, I think is a change people, culture, processes is a long drawn process, and that is something which one has to be aware of and take it suitably to move forward.
No, and you again touch upon a very important point around people and how do you build a data-driven culture in an organization. And maybe I'll ask all the panelists to reflect on this as one of the last questions, that how do you build a data-driven culture for their respective organizations. But let me, before that, go to Praveen. Praveen, your take, how has your organization, for example, gone about this journey? What have been some of the challenges that you have seen and navigated through?
Well, I think what the points that my fellow panelists talked about, all very relevant. Whether it's master data or the data quality, absolutely important. And I think in the journey towards solutions, leveraging analytics, machine learning, whatever, today Gen AI, in all of them, often the technology or the algorithms is probably the simpler part. That's available out of box. I mean, all clouds provided, there are so many options. The data is the more difficult part, always getting it together. And I think the most difficult part is the whole change management, because any solution deployment, and I mean, there may be some, let's say, for online, it's not such a challenge because it's one platform. The moment it gets into changing, let's say, the way your organization is working when it comes to running their supply chain, doing manufacturing, doing planning, scheduling, how do you do design? All those, the involvement of the end users and, really focusing on the change management while in this journey becomes the most important, the most time consuming as well. And for us also, it's always been, you have the solution, but to get the end users comfortable to accept that, fine, we can leave this job to an algorithm and not do it the way we used to do traditionally. That's a big change, culture of comfort about how things are, loss of control sometimes. So those are the pieces that you need to really manage and work very closely with the business stakeholders to make that happen. And those become the big challenges in deploying solutions is one point I would probably like to highlight.
No, that reminds me the stories that I used to hear from my father, right? When calculators had come, people would still double check whether the calculator is showing the right answer or not. We'll get there. But if I make, again, and Sandeep, maybe I should begin with you again. How do you navigate through this change? How do you build a data-driven culture in the organization? We are all technologists on this table. But there are wider stakeholders in any organization, and then obviously the entire organization is a living is a living entity. Any tips, any suggestions on how do you navigate and help with the people angle of it? How do you build data as the DNA of the organization?
Sure. So first of all, not only data projects, all technology projects, I would say 70% is change management and 30% is technology and rest of things. And for the similar reasons, people don't like change. So people resist change and people want to hold on to the things. So there are two things. I mean, there is a hard way which has to be taken, that you stop the data access from other systems. You give people one system. This is the system you have to work with. Again, it depends on the organizational culture. B, you need to have your champions identified. So for us, what we did it department-wise. So we took one department, brought in, the head of department's view, told this is the way to go. So when, in his Monday morning review, somebody opened Excel, he said, I'm not going to do reviews. Bring up the dashboard of the analytics system that you've developed. When that started happening, people started to log in, and We also drove it through, various metrics that how many people are logging in, dashboards. So what is the adoption percentage of department A versus department B? Kind of a competition, gamification. So people started logging in, started using the dashboards. The good thing is that we need to have a digital adoption platform monitoring. Otherwise, you will just, people will download and will go back to the Excel route. So you need to monitor, you need to tell people, and you need to have your champions who then go ahead and, say with authority that I have given up Excels in my department. And once that happens, then other people will want to follow the change which is appreciated across organizations. So you have to change the mindset and you drive it through, this gamification or choosing your early winners. So you need to carefully choose who could be your winners, because certain people are more dependent on data. They are hard pressed for the time. They need insights. So today, in fact, we have given up the red, amber, green. Nobody goes and reads red, amber, green. If something is red, what are the actions to be taken? They are populated in plain text. So people just discuss in 30 minutes, how do I, action on these problems and come up with a solution. So reviews from 1.5 hours have been reduced to 30 minutes now. So that's what we did before changing.
No, again, you've stressed on a very important point, importance of change agents, ensuring gamification. These are some of the foundational elements that can help organizations drive transformation and change. Rajneesh, I may ask you next, what have you seen, some of the things that have worked in your experience in terms of building this fabric or culture around leveraging data and analytics in your day-to-day life?
I will segregate intelligence from analytics right now. Hello. So I will segregate business intelligence from data analytics for a moment. BI is some standard dashboards, some standard reports which are published on a period. Analytics is something that you do day on day, that you continue to strive. Fortunately, at campus, we have been able to build that culture. We have inculcated data analysts in 5 different departments. There's a set of data analyst team which has been dedicated to the departments, and IT as a business partner is supposed to create data models for them and not do the on-demand data run. The data run has been given as an ownership to the business itself, and that is where we have seen the real value coming out of it. When you run it through IT, you have some ad hoc demand, so you do this, you do that. But when you're sitting on the data whole day, with the data model whole day, and when you're churning lots of data, sometime you will find some relevant, sometime you will not find relevant. But there is a dedicated team who's working over it throughout the time. So I would say we have been lucky that way to bring that culture to the organization and inculcate those identified data analysts, the champions in the system, and they do this throughout the period that they are there for.
No. Thank you. Rajiv, your thoughts?
So I think we need to start from business. I think I started with that only. What is the business objective? I think it's probably, we always say inside outside versus outside in. So I think don't look at data from a perspective of a data scientist. I think look at a business problem and how do we resolve the business problem. And then you work out backward, what solution, what are the business issues, what are the constraints, what are the bottlenecks, what kind of supply chain timelines, so on and so forth. I think if you have that approach, I am sure meaningful solutions will be found.
Praveen, let me come to you next. Again, what have been your experiences on this? How do you build this data as a foundation of everything that you do in an organization around every decision making? What are some of the things that you have seen working, and what are some of the pitfalls that any organization need to be aware of?
I think the change management for adoption is not an easy problem. I mean, certain areas you can get quick wins. In our organization, what we typically end up doing, because we are multi-brands, we typically drive a particular use case in one segment, one brand, let's say, whichever shows the most interest or where we find there's more traction. And or where the request comes from. Let's say somebody asks us specifically to do a particular use case, and then we socialize it across different brands. So the moment you're able to show success in one area, then it's far easier to get that adoption or get that buy-in from others, because there are a few people who are willing to experiment, but not everybody. And most analytics especially is, you have to, it's an iterative process. It's not that, it's not like automation where you deploy a tool and, fine, it will start working, right? It needs multiple iterations before you can get it to a point where it starts being effective. And that can only happen with fair bit of trial and error, working closely with business, and you can't get it done across the board. So that's how we approach it typically. That do it in one place, show some success, then showcase it across everyone, and then drive that adoption further.
One of the things that I have seen in my experience working well for many organizations, everything apart from what my fellow panelists said, is having a very clear top management sponsorship, right? If your organization see your leaders leveraging data on a day-to-day basis, that drives a very different behavior and outcome. If using one version of truth, whether you continue to review on Excels or you use BIs or dashboards on a day-to-day basis. So that top management sponsorship drives a different set of behaviors as well. That's something that I have seen in my organization and some of my clients' organization working really well. But absolutely wonderful insights. Any closing comments from all of you? Anything that you would like the audience here to keep in mind as they think about this journey in their respective organizations? Anything that you, Praveen, Sandeep, Rajneesh, Rajiv, that you would want to share before we close?
So I would say patience is the key. Data analytics do not give you wonder results every day. You have to be consistent, you have to be persistent, and keep doing that journey. Definitely you will come across various data points which will help you get the business value out of it. But sticking to it is important, and being in this ritual is very important.
Yeah.
I'll just add one thing, no shortcuts. I think it's a long-term process. Don't try to get quick results. I think there are a lot of steps to be taken before you start getting business insights for a business use.
First thing I would like to say that if you have not started, start it today. It's never too late. Second, have at least 3-year roadmap. Don't worry about technology. All technologies are good. Just focus on the quality of data and your objectives. That's it.
Thank you. Praveen?
I think one thing based on what our experience was in this journey was that, it was always whether you first focus on the use case and then figure out how you will solve it, or first figure out your data engineering, so to say. I mean, get your data platform and then work on use cases. And it used to be back and forth. And I think what we found worked better was that nobody has the patience to go through use cases if they're waiting on the data to become available, right? And that often becomes the biggest challenge. So in a data journey, it needs that commitment to at least take that first step where you get all your data into a platform where then now it is ready to be, and platform could be anything. But that's an important first step. Whether you have a use case or not, you should have that commitment from the organization to invest in that and put that in place. Because once you have that, then you can completely focus on any use case and make that happen in reasonable time where it starts adding value to the business. Otherwise, starting from the use case often becomes very challenging to just get the entire data pipeline set up to make it work.
Thank you. So, we're pretty much coming to the close of the session. I just wanted to thank all of my fellow panelists, Praveen, Sandeep, Rajiv, Rajneesh. Thank you for sharing insights and your own experiences. I found it very, very valuable. Mr. Ambani said, right, data is the new oil. And, the importance and the impact cannot be stressed enough. Some of the largest companies that we see in the world today, the FANG organizations, they have really leveraged this as a competitive advantage. And for retailers, in my view, there is no bigger competitive advantage than the data around the customers' behavior day in, day out that they see. And our ability to leverage this, our ability to provide the best customer experiences, hinge upon our ability to create that analytics backbone. So again, once, thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing more success stories from your organizations and your own personal life going forward. I really enjoyed this session. Thank you for taking our time.